Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode in my proposed future British tank tech tree series. As you can tell, we're going to be doing the premium tanks today. I've added some into the list since we were last here. The Bren Carrier, the Valiant, the TOG 2, the Achilles, which was basically an M10 with a 17-pounder gun, and the Black Prince. I was going to add the Skink, which was a Canadian anti-aircraft, self-propelled anti-aircraft tank, but I couldn't find any pictures of it, so I've decided not to really look at that for the moment. But we'll quickly go into the video and I'll show you what the rest of them are. Now, the first premium vehicle is the Bren Carrier, or Universal Carrier, with the 2-pounder gun on it. Now, both the Australians and the Canadians made these modifications. I believe the one in the picture is an Australian one, but they were only ever used for training, so that's the reason I haven't put it with the self-propelled guns or tank destroyers, because I don't know how many were built exactly, but apparently they weren't used in combat, and it should be quite good for its tier. I've put it in tier 1, because, well, the Bren Carrier wasn't that armoured. I think it only had about, trying to find it, 7 to 10 millimeters of armour, but it was extremely fast, 30 miles an hour. And the crew are unprotected, yes, but I believe it would be a good tank in the low tiers. Quite a good gun, fast speed, and yeah, it's just something unusual for people to spend their golden eagles on. I think it would be a good premium tank to have in the game. Now, the next tank, the Valiant tank, was not very good. I've heard it's one of the worst tanks of the war, and I think they still keep it around, and they show like tank designers, students or engineering students the tank, and they have to point out all the flaws in it. Basically, it was meant to be an assault tank or infantry tank in the Far East, so it had to be light but heavily armoured, which is quite a hard thing to do, and it had to be armed with a 6-pounder or 75mm gun. One was built, it had two 7.92mm machine guns and the 6-pounder gun, and 114mm of armour, so very good. Only 12 miles per hour on road and 7 miles per hour off road, which is quite bad. But again, it was designed as an infantry tank, so it wasn't meant to be fast. Unfortunately, I'm having to use internet sources, unfortunately, because none of my books have it listed. I'm trying to find the bit I'm looking for. The suspension was tested at Chertsey in May 1945. The first day gave minor problems and was abandoned after only 13 miles of easy on-road driving. The driver was exhausted by this time, finding that the steering levers needed his full weight to operate, and the seat, foot brake and gear lever all carried risk of physical injury in using them. The entire project was actually cancelled after that one test, because basically using the tank was risky. I mean, literally, the driver could be injured or killed trying to use it. The reason I've put it as a premium is, again, only one was built, and the reason I've suggested it at all is most of the mechanical and other problems that are suffered by tanks in real life aren't really modelled in War Thunder, which is why we have the Comet that doesn't explode, while changing your engine from full to zero doesn't cause it to flame out, that sort of stuff. But yeah, it would be a very good tank for its tier, where I've put it at tier 3. Not the best gun in the world, but heavily armoured. And yeah, it is slow, but I think it would be an unusual tank to have in the game. Now, I'm sure most of you are familiar with the next tank, the TOG. The TOG 2 heavy tank. Basically, when they started designing this, they were still sort of expecting it to be like World War I, trenches and mud and shell craters, all that sort of stuff. That didn't happen, so they sort of shelved the project. But it is a very big tank, 80 tons or 81.3 metric tons. Only one was built, like I said. 75mm of armour at the front of the turret, 50mm at the side, and 25 at the rear of the tank. And it was armed with a 17-pounder gun and a 7.92mm machine gun, so quite well armoured. I mean, maybe not as armoured as other tanks, but it's got the 17-pounder gun, which is why I've put it high tier 3. This needs to be in the game. Everyone I mean, if anyone's watched the Mighty Jingles or been on World of Tanks, you know how famous this tank is. So it'd be a travesty not to have this in the British tech tree. Now, the next tank is the Achilles, basically an M10 tank destroyer with a 17-pounder gun, so another conversion a bit like the Sherman Firefly. Reasonably armoured, 9 to 57mm of armour, although it's got an open top turret, so not protected from aircraft. Had a 17-pounder gun, a 50 caliber machine gun or Bren gun as secondary armament, and it could do 32 miles an hour, so reasonably well armoured, extremely well armed gun-wise, and extremely fast. Now, it would be a bit like the Sherman Firefly a bit, maybe not as good, but I think it would definitely be a very good tank to have in the game. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it would be good to see some of the more of the Lend-Lease tanks that Britain converted for the 17-pounder, but I think, yeah, this would be a good tank to have in the game. Now, the last tank I've got on my list is the Black Prince. Basically, this was a Churchill tank, but with a 17-pounder gun. 152mm of armour, two 7.92mm machine guns as secondary armament, 10.5 miles on road, 7.5 off road. The tank was actually quite good from what I understand. It's just by the time they had finished it, they had already got the Sherman Firefly, the Comet and Centurions were coming into production. They just didn't need it. The other tanks had better advantages, so they just didn't build it. They built 13 prototypes, so more than most tanks, to my opinion. But yeah, it would be an extremely good tank to have, because I've already put the Churchill in this tank tech tree, and I think having the Black Prince with the upgraded armament, not as a main tank because it's only prototype form, but as a premium, it would be I think a worthy addition for the British tank tech tree. So, that's it for the proposed future British tank tech tree. I'm going to be doing more on the Japanese, French and Italians, but yeah, for the British, I think that's about it for the moment. Like I said, it's not meant to be a full tech tree, just like, I think the basics that need to be in here, and I think we've covered it, well, I've covered it quite well. We've got most of the cruisers, all the infantry tanks and the various different variants. Do sort of wonder how we're going to do the light tanks, like the reserves, whether it'll be the Mark 6C or the medium Mark 2. Yeah, I've just moved that a bit. Commonwealth, I think, is quite well represented. Got quite a few tank destroyers and assault guns. Quite a few self-propelled anti-aircraft guns, and a decent amount of premiums. Got 6 in each of them, so it should be okay for ranking up, although it may be having to research most of the tanks in each tier. Not giving you much option on avoiding some, unfortunately, but yeah, I think it's a reasonably good tech tree. Do leave your own thoughts on the tech tree. I could always do with more feedback and comments and all that. Yeah, but if you like the video, leave a like, subscribe if you like these sorts of videos, leave feedback like I just said. Thank you for watching this episode, and hopefully the whole of the British future tank tech tree series, and hopefully you'll watch some of the other proposed tech trees I'll be doing. Thank you for watching, I'll see you later.